I'm a 32M, and this story honestly still messes with my head even now. It starts when I was 10 with my older brother, Matt, and it's been haunting me in ways I didn't even know until recently. Just a heads up, this one gets a bit raw. So growing up, my house was one of those places where boys will be boys, basically meant whatever happened, happened, and you just learned to take it. My brother Matt was 3 years older than me, and from the outside, he looked like any regular kid. Funny, charming when he wanted to be, but the second you were in his orbit, he could turn into a total nightmare. Our parents didn't really notice. Or maybe they noticed, but their solution was always the same. Shrug, say something like, boys roughhouse, or stop whining. Looking back now, I think they just didn't want to deal with it. I remember that one summer afternoon like it was yesterday. We were in the backyard, and Matt and I were playing. Or maybe fighting is more accurate. He had this energy that was scary in a way that made my stomach knot. We were tussling near the old chain-link fence behind our house. One minute we were wrestling, laughing like normal kids. The next he slammed me into the fence post so hard I saw stars. My face hit it first. I remember the sharp crack in my mouth. I tasted blood immediately. I was crying, probably screaming, and my two front teeth were gone. Literally ripped out in the moment. And what did my parents do? My mom came outside, looked at me, and said, deadpan, stop whining. Boys roughhouse. Like, that's it. My dad didn't even glance at me, just muttered something about kids being kids. I think at that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't just hurt physically, I felt invisible. Like my pain didn't matter. I remember sitting on the porch steps, spitting blood into the grass, feeling this hollow rage mixed with this strange numbness. After that, I learned to shut up. I learned to swallow the pain. I learned to smile when everything inside me was screaming. It became a survival tactic. At school, I smiled, I laughed, I played along. But at home, I kept my distance from Matt. I didn't tell anyone about the bruises anymore. I didn't react when he pushed me, tripped me, or threw me into walls. I became quiet, careful. I became the kid who didn't fight back, because fighting back got you nowhere. Matt, of course, never got punished. He just kept doing what he did, winning the attention, getting the laughs, acting like a little king in our small kingdom. And the craziest part? He never seemed remorseful. He'd throw some fake grin at me when I winced, then go on with whatever he wanted. I grew up watching him, feeling this weird mix of resentment and fear, and eventually, I just avoided him. I moved through my teenage years like a ghost in my own house. Fast forward a bit. High school, college, adulthood. I don't think I even saw him properly after I turned 18. He left for college first. My parents barely noticed. I moved out, started building my own life. Therapy helped me process some of it, but the memory, it lingered. Every time someone got aggressive with me, every time someone tried to push me around, a flash of that 10-year-old kid would come back, scared, bloodied, wanting to scream. Here's the thing, I never confronted him, never called him out, never told him how those moments shaped me. I think part of me was afraid. And part of me, honestly, I just didn't care enough to reopen old wounds. I built boundaries silently for my own sanity. I built my life around safety, independence, and making sure no one could hurt me the way he did. So now we get to the present. I'm 32, working a decent corporate job, the kind of role where stability is everything and drama is unwelcome. I like it that way. My life feels controlled. Until last week. I was at my desk, sipping coffee, checking emails, when the front desk receptionist buzzed me. She said there was someone here for HR paperwork, and he needed me to sign something. The name on the paperwork made my stomach drop. It was Matt, my brother, the same Matt who slammed my face into a fence post, the same one who I hadn't spoken to in decades. And he was standing there, all grown up, dressed in a crisp business suit, looking perfectly normal, polished, like nothing had ever happened. I froze. I couldn't move. My brain was screaming, trying to reconcile the 10-year-old version of him, red-faced and cruel, with this 30-something professional standing in front of me, calm, smiling politely. I could feel my chest tighten. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to see him. And yet, I had to. HR was waiting, and the receptionist was already looking at me like I was stalling. So I walked over, tried to force a casual smile, tried to act normal. He extended his hand like nothing had ever happened, said my name. And for the first time in years, I realized something. The past doesn't just vanish, no matter how long you run from it. So I shook his hand. Felt wrong in a way I couldn't quite place. His grip was firm, practiced, the kind you see in people who've been trained in suits and boardrooms, not playground fights. I wanted to pull back. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. HR was hovering behind me like a shadow, and honestly, part of me felt obligated, like some weird, cruel cosmic joke had forced our collision. He smiled, all charm, and said, "Long time no see, huh?" My mouth went dry. I just nodded. Words felt useless. Part of me wanted to yell, "Do you remember what you did to me?" But the other part, the part that learned to survive silence, told me to shut up, swallow it, move forward. So instead I did what I'd been doing all my life. I kept it cool. "Yeah," I said, voice tight. "Been a while." He laughed, this light, easy laugh that made my stomach twist. I knew that laugh. It used to come right before he did something terrible, like a warning I'd ignored a million times. He seemed oblivious, or maybe deliberately detached from the past. Either way, it pissed me off. HR handed us the paperwork. Apparently, Matt had applied for a role in another department, and the final step required me to verify some internal compliance stuff. Basically, I was his gatekeeper. And I hated it. Hated it. My pulse spiked, my hands got sweaty, and all I could think about was that fence post, the blood in my mouth, the screaming, the silence from my parents. We walked into the small conference room together. I could feel the tension radiating off him. Maybe he didn't even know it. Maybe he did. HR left us alone for a few minutes, probably assuming this was all routine. I could feel the air thickening. My brain was running through a million scenarios. Do I confront him? Do I let him slide? Do I smile and pretend nothing happened? I opened the paperwork, pretending to read. He was watching me, calm, poised. He leaned back slightly, crossing his arms. "So, this is weird, right?" he said. Casual, like we were talking about lunch plans. My jaw clenched. Weird, weird. The word made me want to scream. "Yeah," I said slowly, forcing the word out. "Weird." He chuckled, leaning forward. "I didn't expect you here." "Neither did I said. Short, clipped. My throat was dry. Every muscle in me was ready to explode, but I forced myself to breathe. He tilted his head, studying me. "You look different." I didn't know if it was an observation or a jab. Maybe both. Maybe he didn't even remember what I looked like at 10. Maybe he did and just didn't care. Either way, it hit me harder than I thought. For a second, the 10-year-old inside me flared up, the scared kid who swallowed blood, who learned to shut up, who got ignored. I could feel him there, sitting in my chest, trembling, wanting revenge, wanting justice, wanting to be seen. And part of me wanted to let him out. But then the adult me, the one who built a life away from him, who became independent, who survived by keeping control, took over. I reminded myself, I'm not a kid anymore. I have the power now. I have the leverage. And right now it's all on him. I glanced at the paperwork again, forcing my fingers to steady. I realized I could make this simple, painless, procedural. Or I could make him sweat. The thought brought a small, cold thrill. Maybe the first real thrill I'd felt in years about Matt. He leaned closer, voice dropping. "You remember that summer? Backyard, fence post." He smirked, half joking. And that smirk, God, it was exactly like I remembered. Hit me like a punch. My stomach dropped, my blood boiled. I swallowed hard, forcing myself not to lunge across the table. "Yeah," I said, voice low. "I remember." He raised an eyebrow. "Wow, you really hold grudges, huh?" "Not a grudge," I said carefully. "Memory. Experience. It sticks." He leaned back again, calm, casual, but now I noticed the tension in his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. He wasn't used to this. I could see it. He'd always been the predator, the one in control. Now he didn't know what I had in mind. We went through the paperwork, signatures, initials, all the motions. My pen hovered over his section longer than necessary. HR didn't notice. Matt didn't notice, at least, not at first. But I was savoring it. The delay, the control, the quiet satisfaction of finally having some power in a situation where he'd always dominated me. Finally, I signed, sealed, and handed the forms back. Matt looked at me, waiting for a smile, for the easy camaraderie he assumed would exist. But I didn't smile. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, stood up, and left the room, leaving him with his papers and the tension he couldn't read. As I walked back to my desk, heart still racing, I realized something. This wasn't over. The past doesn't disappear, and sometimes it shows up where you least expect it. Matt had walked into my life thinking he could glide through it like nothing had ever happened, but he was wrong. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't in decades: readiness. I was ready to face him, ready to make him feel the weight of all those years, ready to finally, maybe, get some closure. I didn't see Matt again for a couple of days, which, honestly, was a relief. The first encounter left my chest tight and my thoughts scattered like shattered glass. I kept replaying it over and over: the backyard, the fence post, the blood, the way he smirked at me as if nothing had ever happened. And now he was walking around my office, pretending we were strangers, pretending like he had the upper hand. But I couldn't pretend. Not anymore. I realized that day, sitting at my desk, staring at my computer screen and trying to focus on spreadsheets, that I had spent my entire life avoiding him, suppressing the anger, swallowing the fear, and now he was back in my orbit. And this time, there would be no escaping. I saw him in the hallway, talking to another coworker. He looked the same: confident, polished, effortless. Part of me wanted to storm up to him, scream, throw the past in his face. The other part, the careful, strategic part, whispered, "Don't act rashly. Make him sweat. Make him realize that what he did left scars that don't fade." So I did what I'd learned to do over the years. I observed. I watched him. I noted the little things: the way he talked, the way he laughed, the way he assumed everyone liked him. I started keeping tabs, noticing patterns, the same way he must have noticed mine back when we were kids. Only now, I had control. Then came the first real test. Our department had a joint meeting. Matt was assigned to present on some new client initiative. I was there too, forced to sit through it. The moment he walked in, the room seemed to shift. People greeted him warmly, laughing at his jokes, nodding at his points. I felt my teeth clench. I could see that old arrogance in his eyes, the one that used to terrify me, and I realized he still didn't know how much he'd hurt me. The presentation started. Matt was smooth, articulate, perfectly rehearsed. But I noticed the little cracks: hesitation when he answered a tough question, a slight flush on his face when a manager challenged him. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone else. But I saw it, and it felt like justice. After the meeting, people filed out, chatting and laughing. Matt approached me, grinning like nothing had happened. "Hey," he said, casual. "So, how's life?" I stared at him. I wanted to laugh, cry, scream, all at once. "Life's fine," I said. Clipped. Controlled. He tilted his head, smiling, trying to charm me. "You've really changed, huh? Not as scared as you used to be." That made my chest tighten. Scared. That word. The word I'd spent years burying. But I didn't react. Instead, I let a pause hang in the air, letting him feel the weight of it. And maybe, just maybe, he did. His smile faltered slightly, the kind of subtle change only someone who knew him well would notice. "Scared?" he asked finally. Curiosity laced in his tone. "Yeah," I said, slow, deliberate. "You made sure of that when we were kids." Matt blinked. For a second, I thought he might deny it. I thought he might laugh, shrug it off. But something in his face shifted: realization, maybe, or guilt. Or maybe fear. Maybe he didn't know I remembered. Maybe he didn't know I'd carried it with me. We didn't say much more in the hallway. People were still around, and I didn't want a scene. But I felt it. This tension, this unspoken reckoning. It was like the world had finally tilted back to balance, even if just slightly. I knew this wasn't closure. This wasn't over. But it was the first crack in the armor he'd built over decades of charm and impunity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every detail: the fence post, my teeth, the way our parents ignored it, the first encounter at work, the meeting. The anger, the fear, the betrayal, they all came back, fresh and raw. But this time, I also felt something new: readiness, control, a sense that I could face him, finally, as an equal, or maybe even as someone who had the power to make him reckon with his past. The next day, I made a decision. I wouldn't let it fester silently anymore. I started small, subtle reminders, questions in meetings, careful observations. I noticed the way he treated junior employees, the way he assumed authority, the way he tried to charm everyone into overlooking mistakes. It was infuriating, but also informative. I realized I could play this game now. Not like a kid, not like someone scared, but like someone who had been wronged and finally had leverage. It felt strange, almost intoxicating. The fear I'd carried for decades was still there, but it was tempered with something else: strategy. I began thinking in terms of moves and countermoves, imagining scenarios where he'd finally feel a fraction of what I'd felt as a kid. By the end of that week, I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't avoid him anymore. We were in each other's worlds now, unavoidable. And unlike our childhood, this time, I had the upper hand. I had history, memory, scars that told me exactly who he was, and more importantly, exactly how to make him confront it. The anticipation, honestly, scared me almost as much as the first time he slammed my face into that fence post. But now, I was ready. And I realized that sometimes, life doesn't give you closure. You have to take it. The following week, I decided to push things further. Matt had gotten comfortable, smiling at everyone, cracking jokes, acting like nothing had ever happened. But I knew better. I had decades of memory stacked in my favor, and I wasn't about to let him glide through this like he always did. It started with small things. Questions in meetings, innocuous, polite, but with a sharp edge. Little inconsistencies in his reports, pointed clarifications, subtle challenges. Every time he answered, I studied him, noting hesitation, twitch, a flicker of defensiveness. I was learning him the way he once learned me. Only now, I had the upper hand. Then came the hallway moment. I was walking back from lunch when I saw him talking to some new hires. The charm was in full effect, all smiles and easy confidence. Something inside me snapped. I stepped closer. "Matt?" I said, voice steady but loud enough for a few people to turn. He looked up, grinning, expecting casual banter. "Can we talk?" His grin faltered, just a bit. "Sure," he said, a little too quickly. There was that old instinct kicking in, the one I remembered from our childhood. The predator realizing the prey is no longer powerless. We stepped into an empty conference room. The door clicked behind us, shutting out the faint hum of the office. I turned to face him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air was thick, heavy, electric. I could see it in his eyes: curiosity, caution, maybe a hint of fear. "Do you remember that summer?" I started slowly, deliberately. "The backyard? The fence post?" He froze. His easy charm disappeared, replaced by a faint shadow of recognition. "Yeah," he said carefully, like testing a memory he hadn't thought about in decades. "You slammed my face into it," I said, voice calm but cold. "I lost 2 teeth. I bled. And no one did a damn thing." He swallowed, looked down. For a second, I thought he might apologize. I thought maybe he'd fumble, like a kid realizing the consequences for the first time. But he didn't. Instead, he tilted his head, defensive, almost smug. "Look," he said, "that was a long time ago. We were kids. Things happen. You're making a big deal out of nothing." A laugh bubbled up in me, bitter, sharp. "A big deal? Matt, you don't get it. That's the moment I learned to shut up. That's the moment I learned you, and everyone else, doesn't care about my pain." That moment stayed with me every day. And now you walk in here, acting like nothing happened, like you're some untouchable guy, and it pisses me off. His jaw tightened. "I didn't." "No, you didn't," I interrupted, voice rising slightly. "And that's exactly the point. You never did. You never cared, and you probably think you were fine. But I remember. I remember every scar, every time I shut up to survive. And now it's time you realize what that feels like." He took a step back, startled by the intensity. The old pattern was crumbling. The kid who used to dominate, the predator of the playground, was suddenly confronted with someone who wouldn't cower. "You think you're better than me now?" he asked, a tremor in his voice betraying him. "I'm not better," I said quietly, deliberately, letting the words hang. "I'm just here. I survived. And you're finally going to feel the weight of what you did. Not revenge, not hatred, just acknowledgement. Reality. The truth." He blinked, swallowed hard. I could see the panic rising now, the first real flicker of fear I'd ever witnessed in him. The tables had turned. For decades, he had been the one in control, the one untouchable. And now, I was the gatekeeper, the person who had the power to expose him, challenge him, make him accountable. We stood there, silent, stretching. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud in my ears. The room seemed smaller, tighter, charged with decades of unspoken resentment. I realized something terrifying and exhilarating. This was my moment. My chance to reclaim a piece of myself that had been stolen at 10 years old. Finally, he spoke. I didn't think. Didn't think. I echoed, voice sharp. You didn't think my pain mattered. You didn't think I'd remember. You didn't think anyone cared. But I did. I remember. And now, you're going to have to see it. Feel it. Live with it. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked small. For the first time, the man who had towered over me as a kid, who had bullied and intimidated, looked like someone trying to figure out how to survive a storm he didn't expect. Good, I said softly. That's all I needed. And then I left, walked out of the room, leaving him standing there, speechless, exposed, powerless. The satisfaction was subtle, not explosive, but profound. For the first time in decades, I felt something like closure. Maybe not complete closure, but enough to know that I had finally confronted the shadow that haunted me. As I returned to my desk, I realized this. The past doesn't just vanish. It waits. It lingers. But sometimes, life gives you the chance to face it, to reclaim what was taken, to finally stand tall. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had. The days after that confrontation were quiet, almost eerily so. Matt kept his distance, avoiding the conference rooms and hallways where we normally crossed paths. The office hummed along, business as usual, but there was a subtle tension I could feel, the kind you sense before a storm passes. I realized, maybe for the first time, that he wasn't untouchable anymore. I kept my distance too, not out of fear, but out of strategy. I wanted to observe, to understand, to let the new dynamic settle. And I noticed changes immediately. Matt's charm, that effortless ease he wielded like a weapon, was fractured. People noticed it too. He was still polished, still professional, but the confidence was tinged with caution. He smiled less freely, laughed less often, and when he tried to assert authority, it sometimes faltered. I caught him more than once glancing at me, hesitation flickering across his face before he masked it. One afternoon, he finally approached me again, cautiously this time. We were alone in the kitchen, grabbing coffee. He held his cup a little too tightly, and for once, he didn't speak immediately. I studied him, the way he shifted on his feet, the way his jaw tightened. I felt a strange mix of vindication and empathy. Decades of unresolved childhood trauma don't disappear just because you confront them. They linger. I knew that. I'd felt it for years, and now, so was he. Look, he started, voice careful, almost fragile. I know you've been holding a lot against me. And don't. I interrupted gently. Don't try to apologize yet. I don't need it to be sincere. Just acknowledge it. That's all. He nodded slowly. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The room was quiet, the hum of the office muted behind the walls. It felt intimate, in a weird, heavy way. Like we were kids again, except now the roles had shifted, and we were forced to see each other clearly, fully, without the veil of avoidance or ignorance. Finally, he said, almost in a whisper, I didn't know how much I hurt you. And that was it. Not a dramatic apology, not a tearful confession, just those simple words. But it was enough. For the first time, I felt that the burden I'd carried, the fear, the rage, the helplessness, was shared. He might never fully understand it, but he saw it now. He couldn't pretend anymore. We didn't become friends overnight. That would have been unrealistic, but the dynamic shifted. Matt started to treat people differently, cautiously, thoughtfully. Maybe the confrontation forced him to confront not just what he did to me, but how he behaved in general. For me, it was liberating. I felt lighter, freer, like a weight that had been pressing on me since childhood had finally lifted. And then, a few weeks later, something unexpected happened. HR moved him to a different project team, still in the company, still professional, but less immediate interaction with me. I didn't feel relief. I felt closure. The physical space mirrored the emotional space we had finally established. I realized that confrontation didn't need to be explosive to be powerful. Sometimes, it was the quiet, calculated acknowledgement that changed everything. One evening, I walked past the old playground near my childhood home while visiting my parents. The fence post was still there, weathered, peeling. I didn't touch it, didn't think about the pain physically, but mentally, it was different now. The memory didn't sting the same way. I had faced the shadow of that trauma, and for the first time, I felt like I could look at it without fear. I texted Matt that night. Not to reconcile fully, not to restart what we never had, but just to acknowledge it. A short message, we're different now. We know what happened. I hope you understand it too. He replied hours later, I do. And that was it. No dramatics, no long-winded apology, no sudden bonding. Just acknowledgement, mutual, unspoken for decades, finally spoken in a form that mattered. I realized then that surviving isn't just about avoiding pain. It's about standing up, claiming your power, facing the people who hurt you, and refusing to let them define you. Matt had haunted me for years, not just in memory, but in fear. Confronting him didn't erase the past, but it changed how it lived in me. I wasn't the scared 10-year-old anymore. I wasn't the powerless kid hiding in plain sight. I was me, still scarred, still cautious, but whole. The first time he appeared at my job, I could have crumbled. I could have avoided him. I could have let decades of unresolved anger fester silently. Instead, I faced it. And in doing so, I reclaimed not just my own history, but the part of me that had learned to hide in silence. Sometimes, life puts the ghosts in your path, and you have a choice. Let them haunt you forever, or face them, quietly, with control, and finally walk away. I walked away that day, leaving Matt with the reality of the past, and me with the freedom to finally live my present. And for the first time in a long time, I felt unburdened. Years later, I still think about that backyard, that fence post, those lost teeth. But now, instead of fear or rage, I feel perspective. I feel strength. And I know that confronting the people who shaped your trauma doesn't just change them, it changes you. It gives you the power you were denied. And that makes all the difference.